Hello and welcome to another episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
I'm Ginny Dietrich.
And I am the fractional host of today's show, which we'll talk about more right after this.
The fractional host.
Fractional host. I do not need to put in a full week of effort for this show. I'm just going to put in about 30 minutes effort.
So what does that call me? Semi-fractional? Part-time fractional?
You put in the same amount of effort as I do, which is...
Oh, you put... Well, I guess Jen puts in the more effort than the both of us probably.
Yes, we have shifted that, so I do almost none of the post-production. All I really got to do is hit record here and start yapping, so that comes easily to me.
That does come easily for you.
Yeah. So... But we're not going to talk about that. But we are going to talk about fractional help for your agency because this is a popular topic, particularly fractional CFOs, but I've also seen fractional COOs, fractional heads of HR, fractional, I guess those are the main ones for agency. Most agencies wouldn't hire a fractional CMO, or sometimes the agencies themselves become fractional CMOs for other people. So it is a two-way street, but we're going to focus on those fractional roles that help the agencies as they grow. So are they a good idea? When should you think about them? What should you look for if you do? Just anything related to it. So where would you like to start, Ginny?
You know, this is going to come as a big surprise, but it depends.
I mean, I really think we should just record "It Depends" and just end every show.
just do that every week.
Every week, send out. Here's the title. Here's the question. It depends. End.
Love it.
Sign off.
It'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, people probably wouldn't listen to that. So,
probably wouldn't download that.
No,
probably wouldn't have. Yeah.
So, what does it depend upon?
Yeah, it does. It truly does depend, and it depends on size of agency, the scope of work, all those kinds of things. So, when we're looking at external help for things like HR and accounting and things like that, we look at what kinds of things need to happen. And at the size that my agency is, which is still pretty small, you don't need a full fractional CFO. We need a bookkeeper for sure, and we need somebody to help with invoicing and bill paying and all those kinds of things. But we look at it and we say, okay, a fractional CFO tends to be a little more strategic, just like you would be a little more strategic if you went into a client's business. Your team may go in and do some of the tactical work, but you would be much more strategic. And so we look at the fractional help as, do we need help with things like tax planning or growing into a vision or things like that, and may hire somebody for that purpose. But that's usually project work and not a full fractional person.
And I think that's a great point because the whole term fractional is really more of a marketing term. There's no specific structure around what it means to anybody, and it's just become a popular term of art as people have thought more about productizing their services in the professional services world, whether you're an agency or otherwise. So people like to just use these labels, but what does it mean? I mean, I've seen fractional CFOs who were 1 or 2 days a week. I've seen fractional CFOs who are really nothing more than just general accounting advisors for a business. So starting with, as you say, what you need, understand what it is that you're looking for in terms of help, and start there. Don't fall for the marketing spiel. Focus on what your actual needs are first, and then figure out how you get there.
Yeah, I think that's really, really sound advice, because most of us are not at a level where we would need a CFO even 2 days a week. I'm certainly not. I think you probably have to get to 50 or 60 employees before you start to look at something like that. But there will be needs that you have. There's no way I'm going to be doing the bookkeeping. You do not want me doing that. No one wants me doing that. I'm not going to do the invoicing. I'm not going to be paying the bills. Those are kinds of things that we can outsource for sure. But doing that to a CFO in most cases, is too sophisticated, I would say.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I mean, it's at a bare minimum, you need, 50 or 60 employees before you're thinking about needing any kind of a CFO role, full or part-time. Typically, I mean, obviously it depends on the specific nature of your business and exactly how you're structured. But the vast majority of people who are listening to this, have agencies of a size that you don't really need that. You need good, solid bookkeeping. You need good, solid accounting advice. You need good, solid tax advice. And if you've got those things, you're probably in decent shape, unless you're doing a lot of exotic multinational work that requires currency transfers, where you've got a business that's got a lot of, debt or equity issues going on, which the vast majority of you don't and shouldn't have.
Right. Right.
Then, just those basics are probably sufficient. So if you figure out what those needs are, you're not going to overreach in terms of what you're asking for, and that means you're not going to overpay for what you're getting.
Yeah, and I would say that goes the same for HR. It goes the same for legal advice. Like everything that you would outsource to help you run the business, same sort of set of standards. Like really think about what it is that you need. I would say HR is probably one that's a little bit different because you may need somebody a little more strategic for things like onboarding or firing, or you can just hire Chip to do that for you, which is what I would do. But you may need somebody a little more strategic on the HR side of things. But that's the whole point, is kind of figure out what it is that you need and what the standards are, and then fill the role appropriately that way.
Yeah, and I think HR is the area where agencies fail to invest most often.
Yeah.
And it's where they should be thinking about hiring outside help sooner rather than later to help them make sure that they're doing things correctly. Because your risks on the HR side can be fairly substantial, not just in legal and regulatory terms, which absolutely can be there, but in terms of the success of your agency. Because if you don't have the right policies and practices in place from an HR standpoint, you may have higher turnover than you might otherwise if you were running things properly. So, I think most of us immediately say, oh, we need a bookkeeper of some sort, right? Because we hit that point where we're tired of doing the data entry in QuickBooks ourselves.
Sure.
And we're
Yep.
like, somebody else needs to do
Please
this.
do
Somebody
this,
else needs to
Please.
write the checks
Yep.
or send the transfers
Yep.
or whatever, pay the bills. We, most of us don't want to do our own tax return. So we're like, absolutely, we're going to hire someone to do that. But I think HR is an area where people wing it far too often. And particularly with agencies having a lot more contractors, having a lot more remote employees, having a lot more remote employees who are in different states.
Yeah.
These are all things that an HR advisor can help you with. You don't need a full-time HR person in-house for quite a while. If you're listening to this, I venture to guess you do not need and should not hire a full-time HR person in-house, because if you do, they're probably not expert enough to really help you in the way that you need it. But you should absolutely be looking for that help from the outside, because that's an area where it can make a big difference, because we are basically all talent houses, right? That's what agencies are. We house talent. We sell that talent's time to our clients, and we can pretend we don't, but that's what we do.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say from an HR perspective, not just the policies and procedures, but helping you with career pathing, helping you understand what the right salaries are, like the salary brackets. New York just passed a law about salary transparency. I wouldn't have known that. I'm not in New York. I had my HR consultant not said, we've got to be paying attention to this because we have two people who live in New York. So we're having to she helped us go through and create the salary bands and make sure that they were transparent and that everybody knows what they are. And same goes with, contractors or employees that you have in California. Their laws are completely different. So they help you with those kinds of things as well. So I totally 100% agree with you that HR is the one place that we all tend to sort of be like, we can kind of wing it, but it's probably the place you need the most help.
Yeah, and helping you to understand how do you set up a path or a proper conversation about someone's career path. How do you make sure that you're having the right one-on-one conversations? How do you make sure that you're doing your reviews effectively, your compensation and bonus plans effectively? All of that really can benefit from someone who is an expert, particularly because there are so many of these things that are cropping up. And understanding, what can you and can you not ask in interviews these days? Because along the lines of, hey, there are some states that now prohibit you from asking someone's salary history.
Yep.
And so you need to know that, because if you are in one of the states that says you can't ask about salary, don't ask about salary.
Right.
Who can tell you that best? An HR advisor who actually gets updates, because they have these software and reporting tools that let them know, hey, there's this new regulation in this state. They're on top of that. You're not. You shouldn't try to be. You should hire someone who knows what they're doing instead.
And I would say on that point as well, there the younger generation is very attuned to what's happening around them. And I would say, my generation, we just sort of put up with it. And this generation does not put up with it. And I hear things like, oh, I was with a client and there were microaggressions, or they were misogynistic, or I got gaslighted. I've never had to deal with this in my career. So I say to my HR consultant all the time, help. And she always knows exactly what to do, like how to sort of how to investigate it to make sure that the claim is true, and then what to do both with the client and with the team member to make sure that it doesn't happen again and that smooth over, or in some cases help us fire the client or the team member, but that's never happened. It could, but hasn't yet. But to help us figure that out, and what's the plan and what's the path and how do you do those kinds of things? Because like I said, my generation, you're just sort of, we're like, keep it over there, and you kind of just ignored it. And this generation does not, they don't ignore it. You don't get to behave that way.
They don't ignore it, and increasingly, government agencies don't ignore these things
Right.
either, whether it's from the HR side or the tax side or all of these things. And so making sure that you're getting the right outside help for you is important, whether that's someone who's fractional officially or someone who you just are buying part of their time in order to get done what needs to be done.
Right.
But I think one of the key things here is whether you're hiring someone to help you with your taxes or your bookkeeping or your HR, you need to find someone who's a good match for you.
Yes.
And by that, I mean someone who has the expertise in what you do. So hiring someone to do your taxes who has never worked for an agency or professional services firm doesn't make any sense at all. You don't want to hire someone who's used to doing brick and mortar retail stores.
Right.
Because the issues are entirely different, and the odds that they steer you wrong inadvertently are too high. Same on the HR side. You want to hire someone who has experience in professional services generally, but preferably agencies themselves, because the issues that we face are a little bit different, and understanding how to navigate those waters is important. But you also need someone who adopts your philosophy of how to handle these issues. There are tax advisors out there, there are fractional CFOs out there who are extremely aggressive in their strategies.
Yep.
That's fine if you're extremely aggressive in your own outlook on how you want to do things, and how close to the edge you want to play, or whether you want to go over the edge a little bit. HR, really important. You need to find someone who shares your general philosophy for how to manage talent, because there are all sorts of different HR advisors out there. There are all sorts of HR personnel out there. I've worked with a lot of in-house HR folks over the years. Some of them you cannot carry on a conversation with, and that bugs me. Others you can. So you need to know what fits for you, because if you don't enjoy the conversations that you're having with these outside advisors, you're not going to have them. You're going to avoid them.
You're going to avoid them.
And guess what? Outside advisors can only help you if you talk to them. You have to trust them too, because you're going to share all sorts of dirty laundry with them, basically, right? Because you have to tell them this is the good, the bad, and the ugly, because if you don't, they can't give you accurate advice.
Right. Yeah, I 100%. And I think this goes for us working with clients as well. If you don't enjoy the people that you're going to work with, you will avoid those conversations. I avoid the financial conversations like the plague. The only reason I show up is because I love our accountant. He is phenomenal, and he's fun to be around, and it's fun to talk to him. And that's the only reason I show up. If I didn't like him, I would 100% avoid those conversations every single time.
Right. And I think it's important to build long-term relationships with these folks too. So you don't go out and hire someone with the idea that you're going to solve a short-term problem and then be done.
Right.
Because all of these relationships end up improving with time, because they get to know you, they get to know your firm better. And so that means, first of all, you can have shorter conversations. I think I've shared in the past that I've used the same corporate lawyer for 20 some years. And so most of our conversations go very quickly because we understand each other. And so we're just, we're just picking up on one particular detail that we need to address. So that means that I'm getting better advice. It also means, frankly, it's cheaper because with lawyers, you pay by the hour. So the shorter the conversation can be, the better off it is for you. And so you want to be thinking about that when you're hiring this outside help, whether they call themselves fractional or not, that you're really looking to build a personal, ongoing relationship with that help. And that goes for whether you're a firm of 2 and you're hiring a bookkeeper, or you're a firm of 20 or 200 and hiring larger, partial or fractional assistance.
Yeah, and I will say, speaking to your lawyer comment, and also the idea that you have to find people that are in the same boat as you, I had the same lawyer forever. And when we went remote, before it was the hip thing to do, he was like, you can't do this. You can't have contractors. You can't have remote employees. You can't. And I was like, okay, I'm going to find somebody who says I can.
Right.
And I did. And, you know, a 15-year relationship went down the drain because he kept telling me no. And I knew that wasn't the case. I knew that wasn't, maybe we couldn't do it in the way that I was thinking about it. I knew that we could do it, and he would not help me do it. So even if you have a long-term relationship with somebody and they're giving you bad advice, or they're not helping you grow in the way that you want to grow, find somebody who will.
Well, I think that's a good point too, because your needs are going to change over time. In your case, because you change your overall strategy for the business, but sometimes it changes because you're growing. Sometimes it changes because external forces have changed. And so, you know, rather than setting out and saying, hey, I need a fractional CFO, work with what you've got. And as you outgrow it for whatever reason, then try to figure out, okay, let me do a reassessment. What am I missing? What do I not have that I need? How can I get that from whoever I'm working with now? Or do I need to be looking for either another solution or an additional solution? Do I need to replace this person? Do I need to just supplement it? Right? Because if you start with just a bookkeeper, as many do, and maybe you've got a tax accountant, but do you need some sort of accounting strategist? And is that someone who replaces those two other roles and you consolidate it? Or is it a third person that you bring into the mix? And there's arguments for both. It really depends on what stage you're at, what your particular needs are, and frankly, what your budget is, because some of these things can get expensive depending on what you're looking for.
So we just came back to it depends.
It always does, but our goal is to tell you not just it depends, but what are the things that you should be thinking about, so that you can figure out what it depends upon and what paths it might lead you down. I think, to me, the key thing is just, you know, don't get bamboozled by the titles, because I mean, and fractional CFO is probably the most popular one these days. But I have seen fractional CFOs who are really just glorified bookkeepers, and I've seen fractional CFOs who are truly like legit larger company CFOs who are just selling you portions of their time. And there's a big gap between those two. And so understanding what you're looking for is much more important than falling in love with the title, which can be easy to do because that's what marketing's all about. It's making you fall in love with the idea so that you'll spend your money.
I am the best customer of really good marketing. The best.
I mean, really good marketing. Everybody's a good customer. That's why it's really good.
I'm the best. My husband makes fun of me all the time. He's like, you know, they're just marketing. And I'm like, I know, but I really appreciate how well they're doing it.
You must have been great during the years of the infomercials and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Let me buy them all.
Buy them all. Can't sleep tonight, so I'm just going to buy all these crazy
Now I just scroll through Instagram. It's the same thing. Oh, yes, I need that. There's a thing that you put on your neck that you rub your neck to get rid of your tension headaches. Definitely need that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't have found it without Instagram. See?
That's great.
Best customer. Best.
On that note, I think we're going to bring this episode to a close because we're flying right off the rails. So, bottom line, fractional or not, maybe not. It depends. Your mileage may vary. We're not lawyers, accountants, HR people, any disclaimer we can think of. So hopefully we've given you something to think about, though, as you are thinking about the outside advisors that your agency needs to be more successful. And so with that, I'm Chip Griffin.
I'm Jenny Dietrich.
And it does depend.
It does depend.